The scientific method of problem solving. Sonnet common characteristics of research, major steps in carrying out a research and the format commonly used for writing research reports have been discussed in the previous unit. While the scientific approach permeates all research, different types of research adopt methods and techniques most suited to the type of problems they have to tackle. The researcher needs to acquaint himself with various types of research and the methods most suited to each. In this unit, an attempt has been made to describe historical research and its methodology. Units 3 and 4 shall deal with descriptive and experimental research, respectively. The discussion on historical research has been divided into the following subunits. I. What is history? 2. Scope of historical research. 3. Formulation of problem in historical research. 4. Historical sources, primary and secondary. V. Criticism, external and internal. 6. Examples of criticism in historical research. 7. Examples of historical research. Now the important question raised here. What is history? History is a meaningful record of man's achievements. It is not merely a list of chronological events, but truthful integrated account of the relation between persons, events, times, and places. Man uses history to understand the past and to try to understand the past in the light of past events and developments. Historical analysis may be directed towards an individual, an idea, a movement, or an institution. However, none of these objects of historical observation can be considered in isolation. No man can be subjected to historical investigation without some consideration of his interaction with the ideas, movements, or institutions of his bias. The focus merely determines the point of emphasis towards which the historian directs his attention. Best, 94. According to Travers, history is not just a reconstruction of the past. It must reflect the spirit of critical inquiry that aims to achieve a faithful representation of past events. Viewed as a research, history may be defined as an integrated narrative or description of past events or written in the spirit of critical inquiry, to find the whole truth and report it. Good, 115. A newspaper or a journalistic report of some current event or a debate in Congress or a state legislature is not history, because it is not typically an inquiry into the whole truth. The historical novel, like Kakokun, is not history even though incorporating certain events and threads of historical truth, but rather it seeks to entertain the reader. Biography or autobiography becomes history when adequate perspectives enable the author to see the individual in relation to the society and events of his time, but it is not history when the account is limited to a single life in isolation. A writing does not become history merely through the process of preserving material or records in almanac or museum-like fashion. Good, 115 to 116. Next question can be: is history a science? Whether history is a science or not is an issue. Those who do not think history to be science give the following arguments. Although the purpose of science is prediction, the historian cannot always generalize on the basis of the past events. Because past events were unplanned, because there were so many uncontrolled factors in the past events, and because a few persons or individuals were so crucial and important in the past events, hence the same pattern cannot be repeated. 2. The historian must depend upon the observations of others, and these observations are not as reliable as the self-observation. 3. The historian has to complete many gaps in between the facts. These gaps exist because certain parts of information are missing. The historian has to fill in these gaps by inferring what has happened and why did it happen. 4. The historian cannot control the conditions and variables as does a natural scientist. In his science laboratory. Those who are the advocates of history being a science give the following arguments. The historian delimits his problem, formulates hypotheses, collects and analyses primary data, tests the hypotheses as consistent or inconsistent with the evidence, and formulates the generalizations and conclusions. 2. Although the historian may not have witnessed an event or collected the data through primary resources, he may have met a number of witnesses who observed the event from different points of view. The collection and analysis of so many evidences may give a result more accurate and more authentic, as one observer may fail to grasp the information of the event from all points of view. Hence, the information collected through so many secondary sources may be more true and more reliable as compared to one observer getting information from primary sources. 3. In order to reach the conclusions, the historian uses the same scientific method as applied by a scientist, i.e., definition of problem, development of hypotheses, collection of data, and drawing conclusions, rejecting some hypotheses and retaining one hypothesis, collection and analysis of more data, drawing conclusions and formulation of generalizations. 4. Although it is not possible to control all the conditions and variables as is the case in natural sciences, but this objection stands true in the case of other social sciences, and yet we include them in sciences. Best, 98-99. In brief, history is a science in the sense that its methods of inquiry are critical and objectives, and that the results are accepted as organized knowledge by a consensus of trained investigators. The research aspects of history in dealing with sources are scientific in approach, while narration and historiography commonly involve the art of expression and philosophy of author. Good, 116. History is science because it adopts scientific method of inquiry in searching the truth about the historical events and drawing conclusions. The problem is formulated, the source materials are collected and criticized, the hypotheses are developed, and the findings are reported after proper interpretation of the data. In general, a historian becomes involved in the following procedures. A. Formulation of problem. B. Collecting the source materials. C. Criticizing the source materials. D. Formulating hypothesis to explain events or conditions. And E. Integrating and reporting the findings.